hoping I've hit enough of them. And I'm hoping that some of you all, when they will take this information and share it with somebody else that you love.
An inspiration to all of us to make a difference where we can. Once your eyes are open and you have knowledge, you see what's really happening in our world, just gather your strength of spirit and with integrity and compassion, begin to make a difference in light of that truth. I'm certainly fortunate, we're all fortunate, that Mark found his voice and was able to speak out and bring so much truth to light. What he learned in mind sciences is exactly what freed my mind. And the criminals that are in control of the U.S. government, that are in control of our world today, never believed that someone like Mark Phillips would take the information on mind control and use it to free a mind instead of restore one. They never counted on someone like Mark Phillips to be able to stand up and speak, someone who had been trained into secrecy, someone who couldn't speak from such an early age, to find his voice and start speaking out globally and raising awareness for 25 years now. Awareness is the first step towards positive, necessary change. We've met a lot of people while we've been traveling, and Roseanne is just one wonderful, delightful friend we found along the way. We met in 2009 when we were speaking in Hollywood, right in the pit of Hollywood there. Reaching out to help those that had been affected by mind control. And also to raise awareness on solutions on how to heal from mind control, how to expand thinking beyond the controlled medias. And Roseanne was right there, making a positive difference from the very onset of her hit TV show, where she was sprinkling in information. When your eyes are open to truth, when your eyes are open to what mind control is, and you look back through her shows, through the years, you'll find the more you know, the more you see that she's been telling you powerful truths all along. Even through the controlled media, she was sneaking it in there through humor, and she's done a phenomenal job. 25 years later, this is Roseanne's 25th anniversary of having been on television and getting this information out there. We get to share this opportunity here to bring truth to light and raise awareness together once again. In 2009, when we did it with Dr. Colin Ross. Dr. Colin Ross is from this area. Some of you may have heard him speak. He's a leader in mental health, making a powerful difference in helping good people like Roseanne and so many others heal. And also to show how much the military is being controlled and how much militaries worldwide need the truth that makes them free. Roseanne, thank you for helping get this information out for 25 years. Anniversary. People should, once your eyes are open to truth, once you begin to see what's really happening in our world, you'll find that mind control is the common thread that's weaving through society's woes. Mind control is a sliding scale from information control in the medias to the kind of absolute robotic mind control that I experienced on the White House Pentagon level. Information control is a very powerful form of mind control because it's kept people in the dark for generations now. The media has become so violent, it just pits people against each other. It acts like, teaches us that differences are something to war over instead of learn from. The media has been giving us misinformation, and we all formulate our thoughts, our opinions, and ultimately our actions based on what we need, on what we know. And what we need to know is that knowledge base has been altered. We need to reach out to alternative medias, such as conspiracy culture. Thank you. To the alternative radio and other media members, the documentary filmmakers, to people who are making that difference. Now that we have the internet, we have a much better opportunity of having truth. The criminals in control of the United States and our world have been operating on the philosophy that secret knowledge equals power. That's why so much disinformation, misinformation, and hidden truths. Well, their knowledge base is eroding now, or their power base is eroding because knowledge is rising. With their secrets being told through events such as this, for the new whistleblowers of today, like Assange and Snowden, who are using the internet and getting mass amounts of misinformation. Secrets are being told, and as the truth comes to light, that is our turn. That empowers all of us to open our eyes and gather our strength of spirit and make a difference in our own lives, in our own communities, in our own walks of life with what we know. Mark certainly was brave enough to do it, and there's so many others that are that have been affected adversely, and it doesn't take much. It only takes free thought, which allows for free will, which allows for a person to gain their strength of spirit and to begin living a purposeful and meaningful life. I'm extremely fortunate to have survived my mind control ordeal. Mine was horrific and horrendous, and it was based on what the Himmler research had learned about the effects of trauma on the human mind. It's what the Catholics had long since learned about effects of trauma on the human mind through the Spanish Inquisition and the kind of tortures that they were using back with the Crusades in the early days. They knew the effects of trauma on the human mind. That information has been suppressed in mental health systems even. Dr. Ewan Cameron, who is founder of the American Psychiatric Association, who was working in Montreal at the Allen Memorial Institute, was an MK Ultra doctor, and he deliberately suppressed information on the effects of trauma on the human mind. This is what we need to learn because our world is becoming a very violent and traumatic place. As those traumas rise, we become more suggestible. Since my experience was extreme, and mind control is a sliding scale, by understanding what I went through and how I healed, I hope it empowers each and every one of you to begin reclaiming control over our own minds, our lives, and restoring peace to our planet. One thing that I've learned in traveling and speaking out globally is that people all over the world want the same things. They want peace, love, happiness, and truth, the kind of truth that makes you free. I didn't know my own truth until after Mark rescued me, because I'd been born into a multi-generational incest-based family in Muskegon, Michigan, not too far over the border there. My father had been sexually abused, my mother was sexually abused, and they were sexually abusing me. My father was earning his living as a worm digger and supplemented his meager income with child pornography. He was selling that child pornography of me through the U.S. mails when a criminal faction in control of our government, who were furthering what Project Paperclip, the information they brought in on mind control, he was furthering that and bringing it into the CIA and bringing it onto a mass scale. This one particular politician that was involved in that was just a local politician at that time. And he approached my father and told him he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would agree to sell me into MK Ultra mind control. Because any child who had been sexually abused and used in child pornography so horrifically prior to age 5 would be suffering from the dissociative identity disorder that made me a target for mind control. This politician was Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford went on to become the unelected president of the United States. And Gerald Ford, as his political career escalated, so too did my victimization and mind control. My father thought it was a great idea to sell me into the project because he became extremely wealthy with lucrative military contracts. And he was immediately flown to Boston, Massachusetts. I was being raised Catholic. The Catholic child abuse scandal that has finally come to light, emanating out of Boston, Massachusetts, was nothing new while I was growing up. It was a very deliberate, established program which was a merging of Catholic and CIA and Nazi information on mind control to have a traumatized mind to be easily led into mind control. Cardinal law was very much a part of those MK Ultra mind control operations from back when I was so young. And my father was taught how to manipulate the mind of someone who was suffering from a dissociative disorder. And what that meant was that when I was sexually abused as a very young child, I was too young to know that it was wrong. I didn't form any kind of a judgment on it in any way or anything like that. It wasn't a psychological choice. But my brain, the way our brains work when they endure trauma, as my brain sectioned off that traumatic event so the rest of my mind can function normally. And this little compartment in my brain would be triggered open when my father would come in to sexually abuse me again. And that part of me was operating on a subconscious level. When my father had been flown to Boston, the Catholic church that I was being raised in was heavily involved in MK Ultra mind control and was part of this operation. Muskegon, Michigan is known as a pedophile capital because of the pervasiveness of the child abuse there. But I was subjected to occult ritual within the Catholic Church. Occult ritual is very traumatic. And again, I was so young that the blood of an animal was no different than the blood of a person. It was something horrific. And it was so horrific that my conscious mind took flight from the horror of it all. And the memory of that event was compartmentalized in my brain on a subconscious level. As more and more traumas, deliberate, systematic traumas occurred in my life to prepare me for what would later be a White House Pentagon level of MK Ultra mind control. I had so many different sections compartmentalized in my brain with no continuity because the neuron pathways of the brain actually physically shut down and keep that information suppressed. So that while the rest of the mind is functioning normally, if it's traumatized too, there's so many different compartments, there's no continuity between them, and I lost my concept of time. Because without any ability to know what happened here and what's happening here and connecting any aspect of life, time becomes extremely abstract. Without a concept of time, I didn't have any conscious awareness. And without conscious awareness, that left my subconscious mind wide open and easily led. The subconscious mind has no ability to reason. It has no ability to consciously comprehend. It doesn't think the way that the conscious mind does. With the conscious mind, we have choice. The subconscious is just manipulated. So when trauma occurs, the conscious mind is removed more, and it leaves the subconscious mind extremely vulnerable. And it's at times like that then our medias will come in. In the United States, for example, when 9/11 happened, the whole country was traumatized, and we were led into war. A war that's going on today, and it just stays that way. So whenever trauma occurs, be aware of the fact that your brain is responding to that, whether you are rationalizing it or not, because your subconscious mind can't rationalize, but your subconscious is being easily manipulated and easily led. It's times like that we lose more of our freedoms. And it's times like that we're led into things like war, because it's not basic human nature to war. It's not basic human nature to be violent. It's not basic human nature to hate difference. Well, by the time I was sold into the project and I'd lost my conscious thought, I was taken to various military bases and government installations, NASA installations, for systematic, regimented mind control programming. On the military bases, I received some of the kind of programming that the military does, that makes it where they can point and shoot a gun and shoot an enemy without any conscious rationalization of it, because none of us would want to do that. So the military is trained just to point and shoot, respond, just do it. And the kind of programming that they're subjected to is one they can heal from too, because I am so fortunate to have healed from my systematic, absolute, robotic mind control. On those government installations, I was often tortured. And being tortured, my conscious mind would take flight. I think that probably many of us have heard people who've been through an extreme trauma say that it was as though they were looking down on their body. And it's another aspect of our brain and the way that it works. But it was as though my spirit took flight to a safe, loving space. My spirit was never touched. But because I didn't have any conscious thought and control over my own mind, I didn't have the capacity to express that spirit that had taken flight anymore. I didn't have that anymore. And without that, I didn't have soul expression. To me, the spirit is like the energy of being, while soul is that energy expressed. It's what we need to be able to stand up for what we believe in life. It's what we need for being able to live life's purpose and just discover all the beautiful aspects of life that are out there. My victimization went on into more and more traumas and into a regimented form of mind control, to where I could only robotically do exactly what I was told to do. And I was instructed on a Pentagon level and worked directly under Dick Cheney. I think every one of us can see clearly how horrific of a person he is. He not only traumatized me personally, he has traumatized the nation and the world with his violent actions and warmongering, hateful, hurtful ways that have eroded so much of our planet at this point. I don't want to necessarily just point fingers at the likes of Dick Cheney, because these folks that had abused me are dying off, and things are changing, and different people are coming into place. make sure that we don't allow more leaders in that are just like that have that same kind of soulless, hateful agenda. So to understand mind control will be the ultimate. Gerald Ford, when you look at who he had in his cabinet, he had George Bush Sr. as head of the CIA, Dick Cheney as his Secretary of State, Donald Rumsfeld as his Secretary of Defense. Donald Rumsfeld is Mr. Monsanto. I think many of us know how bad Monsanto is affecting all of us. Under MK Ultra mind control, I had your regimented sleep, food, and water deprivation, and what foods I was fed included Monsanto products. It included copious quantities of NutraSweet, aspartame. That artificial sweetener renders a person more easily led. It dumbs people down on a mass scale. Anytime we let a pharmaceutical company manufacture our food, that's absurd. And when we look at the likes of Donald Rumsfeld, who's been a major power player behind the scenes for so long, along with George Bush Sr. and Dick Cheney, it's absurd that we follow leaders that, number one, we didn't elect, and number two, that are misleading us into ways that are very contrary to our being. We need to regain our strength of spirit. When I worked on a White House Pentagon level, I was in and out of the White House, I was exposed to various government leaders, some of which are Canadian. I encourage you all, please look into Transformation of America for the names if you want to know who those are and the absolute details. Because Transformation of America is 100% total, absolute, validated fact. Otherwise, we wouldn't be speaking here, and national security wouldn't be on it. But you can get the absolute details on mind control and who was involved in the Transformation of America, which is now in law libraries worldwide and being taught at major universities so that people can see how our governments have been taken over and how we've all been manipulated into this violent frenzy that's affecting society today. I was forced to participate in criminal covert activities like the CIA's cocaine industry, and their so-called war on drugs was no more than them taking over the industry worldwide and funding their black budget to further their adverse agenda. I was prostituted to various government leaders, and my daughter was as well. And by doing that, they were actually covertly filming that. So if someone that knows anything about filming would certainly know that that has been used in a bad way. It's not the information is neither good nor bad, technology is neither good nor bad. It's who has it, for what purpose, and how they're using it. And that technology was being used to film and these political leaders in very compromising positions and then hold them for blackmail later on. That's how so many of these criminals have been put in place. In one place where I was traumatized in a military maneuver called the Most Dangerous Game, which is, in essence, human hunting. It was as George Bush Jr. was being subjected to the same regimented torture that I was. I'm certainly not the only one that was exposed to MK Ultra mind control on the different projects. There are different projects, and the one that I was used in was multi-generational. It was a genetic mind control project. And George Bush Jr. was used, it was trained and groomed and totally robotically mind controlled to be in the office of president. the office of president in the United States is nothing more than a figurehead. The power is actually going on behind the scene. You notice he did have Dick Cheney as his vice president. And when Dick Cheney shot his attorney in the face, did that news reach up here? When he shot his attorney in the face, Bush Jr. hadn't been told what to say yet, and the cameras went on him, and he said that if Dick Cheney would shoot his own attorney, imagine what he'd do to the likes of you. That was verbatim the program that I had endured in Most Dangerous Game, and I knew he endured as well. So sometimes the more we know, the more we see, and the more we hear, the more sense we're going to be able to make out of even what little tiny tidbits do filter in through the mainstream media. We'll at least understand how we're being manipulated and think twice and know what's going on. In 1988, Mark rescued my daughter and I from our horrible mind control victimization. I had reached the age of 30, as you pointed out, and they considered me all used up because since I was being prostituted, they figured that was too old already anyway. But also, around age 30, each one of us, another thing our brain does is it goes through these electrochemical changes where neuron pathways can start to open up in the brain. And people oftentimes begin to remember repressed memory from childhood, of childhood sexual abuse. Usually around age 30 it'll start to surface. So I was to be killed before anything could possibly begin leaking up, and my memories begin to just, the neuron pathways begin to jump a little bit. Under my control, while my food, my sleep, and my water was all controlled, the number one drug, in spite of being exposed to so much through the CIA's drug industry, the one thing that they're adamantly opposed to is marijuana. And that was one drug that I was never to be subjected to. It was one drug that was absolutely forbidden in the military because it breaks up programming. The chemical actions of marijuana actually open up the neuron pathways in the brain. And that just totally wrecks the programming. It's kind of like, wow, people get that, wow, the mind expansion kind of feeling with marijuana is because it's actually opening up neuron pathways in the brain. And they're finding all kinds of healing applications for it. But one very important one is that it disrupts mind control. It expands thinking beyond that kind of control. And it is definitely a solution for PTSD, mind control soldiers that are needed.